We here at the Then and Now podcast full-heartedly support members of the LGBTQ community. And because of information that we received from our guest that you're about to watch in this interview, we have come to the conclusion that we will not be promoting or streaming in anything related to Hogwarts Legacy that's coming out relatively soon. Thank you and enjoy the video, and we appreciate your continued support.
Okay, it's a step forward.
Hello. This is another episode of the Then and Now podcast. This is a very special episode. Every episode is a special episode, but today in particular, we have Mr. Ben Formaker-Olivas. Oh my God.
We just went over this.
I know. Olivas.
Formaker-Olivas.
Yes. Okay.
From now on, we'll have him do all the introductions. Even when he's out of the show, he'll come back to it.
I'm usually really good about names, pronouncing names, but all of a sudden I'm on the spot and the camera's on, the lights are on. I choke.
We're leaving all this in. None of this is getting cut out. We're actually going to put this at the very front of the video.
Mm-hmm. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. This is an instrumental moment in the podcast history, a staple point, because you are the first game developer that we've had on the podcast. And gaming is a really big part of what we like to talk about and what we like to go over here at the podcast. So thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Right. And we're actually fans of the games you worked on, too, and the companies you worked for, as well as the animation studio, Nickelodeon Animation. So we're all around. We're honored to have you on.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the properties. But let's go ahead and get started with the preliminaries that we have to ask about what got you interested in your line of work as a child. Like what was instrumental in your development in that?
Sure. So actually, it's been kind of a long and winding road to get into game development for me. I had been a gamer since I was a kid, though, and actually I have really fond memories of going to my paternal grandparents' house, and they had a Super Nintendo for all the grandkids there, and I would just stay up literally wearing my thumbs raw playing Mortal Kombat, and my grandma in the morning would have to sit there with like medical tape taping my thumbs, and she thought this was like, oh great, he'll stop now. I was like, no, now I have like protection on my thumbs. I can like really keep playing.
You've enabled me, thank you.
Yeah. And even before that, my paternal grandmother was a teacher, and so she had an old Apple II in the first house that I really went over of theirs, and I would play like old like Asteroid copies and stuff like that.
The originals.
Right. Yeah. And after that, it was, all downhill. It was an only child. So most of my gaming experiences were all single player games. And I came out when I was 12, and being queer, Latinx, and Jewish, I tended to avoid online games as a whole because people aren't great. So
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And so really up until actually my game development career started, had really only ever been a single player games that had really taken up my time. But I didn't realize it was actually a viable career path until 2014. My degree is actually in cultural anthropology. I had wanted to be a professor, and in my last year at UCLA, I found out that for the PhD that I wanted to pursue after that, I was going to have to become fluent in modern Japanese, a Proto-Japanese from when Japan was switching from using Chinese to developing Japanese, and then Chinese from that period. Then take an 8 to 10 year PhD program, and then get placed wherever in the country I could find a job. And again, given my background, there's only certain cities that I generally want to be in.
Right.
Wow. That is extensive. He says this is after you'd already gone through school. I guess
This was my last quarter at UCLA. That I found this out.
You'd already been in school your entire life. That's
yeah.
Jeez.
But real quick, I don't want to blow
man.
past what you said. Obviously, like you said, being queer, Latinx,
Mm-hmm.
has gaming kind of helped you in some way to just kind of celebrate that, or have you found any kind of a community in gaming?
Absolutely. Actually, the first time that I really expanded into playing games with other live humans was actually when I was working at Riot. I was hired to join, at the time it was called Project Ares and was later revealed to be Valorant. And at Riot, there's quite a few employee interest groups, and so Rainbow Rioters is the queer one, and so I started playing Valorant with a lot of my coworkers, as well as Riot Noir, which is the Black employee resource group, and Riot Unidos, which is the Latinx employee resource group. And really, there was crossover between all the groups, and especially within Rainbow Rioters, and that was really the first time that I'd ever not only just played games actively with other people, but really felt like I was finding communities within gaming to actually connect with, and having that be a core part of my gaming experience.
So Ben, if you would tell us exactly like what it is you do when you're working at these studios exactly.
Sure. So my ultimate goal is to work with technical art, specifically for animation and VFX. My position at Riot, my title was production coordinator, and a lot of what I did aside from production ended up being like junior technical art work. I was doing a lot of integration. So in Valorant, the sprays, which are, these in-game graffitis that you can use. I think I integrated the first 200 and something of them into the game, which is, processing them in Photoshop, putting them into the game, making them functional. And then I also was really lucky enough to work with the art lead on the team, Sean Marino, to learn how to actually create custom functionality for the sprays, and really start to dive into that. And then over time that expanded into all of the skins for the weapons in Valorant need to be displayed in the store pages. None of the functionality that you see in game works in the store, because it's all of the logic is meant to be driven off of what a player is doing, reloading, equipping, all of that. And so we would have to reproduce all of that functionality within the store and collections pages. So I started working on that, and actually helped train up and kind of start a new team called Heartbeats, which was specifically focused on integration and release. And so that was also making sure all of the weapons, everything else would get into a specific patch and go out to players. And
you mentioned doing the coding and stuff for spray paint. And roughly, you said 200, about 200 or so.
Mm-hmm.
About roughly how long does it take? How many hours would you spend a day trying to get all that in there? Because I know it's a very painstaking process.
Right.
Yeah. So when I was first starting on those, the tool that we had to actually automate a lot of that process wasn't working. So those initial, I think it was probably initial between 50 and 100 were done manually. And so that definitely took, I think once I got into a rhythm, about an hour per. And it got easier once we got some of the tooling fixed, once we went live, once our team started to grow and there's the bandwidth for that kind of tool support. Right. But then I would, spend late nights just researching how to make, I want to make this spray glow in the dark. I was just researching and trying to figure that out, and it wasn't something that we could end up getting into the live game, but it was something that in helping me, Sean Marino developed essentially a light and dark map reactive logic for some of the skins. And it was really cool to see how he just like ran with that idea and it just completely because I think it was something he had initially said to me that made me think, oh, we could do like a glow in the dark spray, right? And in talking to me with it, I could like see the cogs in his mind turning as he was like, oh, this is how we would do that. Oh, actually, I want to do this with the skin, you know?
Right.
I guess so you luckily enough, it sounds like you had an environment where creativity was 100% encouraged. You weren't kind of shoehorned into forming to whatever the boxes they had. You were able to express yourself as you saw fit or do things, take your own, have some initiative with your own ideas.
Absolutely. I was really lucky enough to join Valorant at a time where the team was relatively small, and so it allowed me to kind of fill in gaps and experiment. You know, I always felt bad because, you know, my producer, Preeti Kanalkar, amazingly talented, incredibly passionate. She really wanted me to dig into the production, and I was trying my hardest, but I have ADHD, and organizing, planning, prioritizing are all the things that I struggle with the most, and that's like the definition of production.
Right.
And it was a struggle, and I would start seeing a lot of these like creative things that was like where my passion was, and I would always feel really torn and feel bad that I wasn't able to be as focused on the production side of things.
I feel you, but Dev, Charlie is by far the most organized one out of our squad.
Stop the cap.
I am it's the mess. And also, by the way, I am old. I am a grown man, and Charlie is much younger than I am, and I'm still the kid.
He's lying to you. He's not a day over at 15. He's lying to you. Funny, obviously, with all this is a lot of technical things that we just discussed. You just brought up and discussed, and you said that cultural anthropology was your major. How did you go about learning how to work in this field? Because obviously, you spent a lot of time in college working on something completely different. Where did you find the time to teach yourself or learn from somebody else?
Sure. So that journey started, I had mentioned 2014. So I went to a conference here in LA called VRLA, and it was a virtual reality conference. And it had started from a meetup and then had eventually gone and grown so that they could fill up the LA Convention Center. And I remember distinctly walking around and being like, oh, people do this for a job. Like this is what people can do for their work. This is technology and exploration and art and all of those things that have always been a big part of my personal life. It was like this moment of realization that it could be part of my actual career. And so I started researching a lot about VR, getting involved in a lot of online communities, and just reading a lot online, watching videos, and was having trouble figuring out how to really acquire those skills and really go from a consumer to actually doing it for my day job.
All right.
And so I also write, and so I thought, okay, I can write. I have a lot of thoughts about VR. I've been in the space at that point, I think it was around 2017, so I've been in the space for a few years. So I started writing for Medium and just publishing my own pieces about VR. I was approached by VR Scout to start being a freelance journalist for them. And it was through a lot of that exploration and talking to creatives that I started getting insight into how people were similarly picking up those skills if it's not what they studied. And really just like, okay, I have to really push myself to learn in my spare time. So I started taking online classes. I started taking classes for Unity, for Unreal, all these game engines, Maya to learn 3D modeling and animation, and really just relying on the internet and YouTube to really try to pick up every piece of information I could. And I would say that the moment of really dialing in on my skills really did come from working on Valorant. As I mentioned, I worked with Sean Marino. He was an incredible mentor. He would sit with me for literal hours, and sometimes after hours of work, just teaching me. And I would also, similarly in my spare time, look through a lot of our shared drive that we had for the team, be like, oh, our VFX lead did a tutorial for anyone who's onboarding onto the VFX team. I'm going to watch down all these videos. Right. So it really was just by being around that I was able to start actually getting some, real grasp of kind of the full pipeline. So I learned on the job, and I feel very, very lucky that I was able to do that. And similarly, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, it's like there was some learning by osmosis, but also it was initiated by your own research ahead of time too, which you had done.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had like a foundation, I had an understanding, so that when I'm listening to a lot of these videos, when I'm watching people work, I could understand what they were doing enough that I could then have context going forward. And so I also never really wanted to pigeonhole my skill set into one thing. A lot of the advice I had been receiving for years at that point is pick something and focus on it. But again, ADHD, that's not the way my brain works.
Right.
But that also allowed me to, okay, so now I'm going to be learning animation. Ooh, this is interesting. I'm going to learn how to do 3D modeling. And because I didn't just stick to one thing, I was able to get a holistic picture of how a lot of different things fit together. And because technical art is such an interdisciplinary field, it ended up lending itself very easily to the way that I had been learning up until that point. We are lucky enough to live in a time where online classes are pretty ubiquitous. So there are programs like, Animation Mentor. I'm actually starting a class in about a week to start animating a small scene. So things like that. So just supplementing and, online platforms like Udemy, where it's, $200 course, it's on sale for $12. So I have a lot of Udemy classes.
We can kind of plug yours as well. That's great. That's
yeah. Yeah, after the podcast, anything you want us to plug or you want to put in the description, just like send it to me after the fact and I'll throw it in the description for the video.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, I've purchased a lot. I have purchased a lot of courses.
But for your own class, when you get your
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously a big thing. I was really interested in asking you about this because this game meant a lot to me in particular in regards to God of War. Obviously you worked really closely with Santa Monica Studios in developing that. So were you there? At what process did you come into the team? Did you come in when they had just built that huge studio, or when did you come in?
Oh no, so that was already pretty established. So I joined in I think it was the middle of last year, and so I was on the cinematic animation team. So all of the cutscenes that aren't cutscenes for God of War, and working with just an amazing team. I was an animation pipeline coordinator, and so a lot of my work was taking the data from the motion capture shots, processing it, getting it prepped, getting it to the animators, helping them troubleshoot, and similarly learned on the job there. I had worked in Maya before. I hadn't worked in Motion Builder, which is Autodesk's main software for motion capture specifically. And I was very lucky, similarly, to work with people that would just sit with me and teach me and answer questions. And even if it was beyond my immediate scope of work, it was something where people were always really happy to teach me. And it always ended up benefiting the work that I was doing and allowing me to grow what I would work on.
That's incredible. And it works. Yeah. It actually works hand in hand with what you said before, how you learned how to do all like the animation essentially, then all of the actual program and everything. So it comes together full circle when you're the one kind of helping direct and kind of put these things together with the mocap and everything else. That's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, are you working on Ragnarok at all, or did you just work on the previous game?
I worked on Ragnarok.
Okay.
Yeah. So that team was just amazing. The first, I guess, thing that I saw and saw them put together was all of the cinematic portions for the trailer, which was really, really fun and amazing. And an incredibly talented group.
Right.
And and that eventually led into the work that I do now. So I'm an associate technical producer at an animation outsource studio called Frame Machine. And so I work, right now I'm functioning as the team's just sole producer because my amazing producer actually got an offer for a job at Nickelodeon in the New York studio, and so she went over there. So I'm working for the next month and a half to get our current project to ship. We're working on a lot of the in-game cinematics, and then similarly for trailers and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
That's incredible.
It's the last time I ask about it, I promise. But we need it for the clickbait. Man, we need it for the clickbait for this to help me do numbers. Is there anything else about the game, whether it's any aspect of you witnessing or you worked on, that you can give our fans any insight on?
Sure. Yeah.
God, it's funny because there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter recently about, they reused this animation, which I always find hilarious because it's people that don't know how games work, and it's a critique that if they understood how much time it took to sit and pose, Kratos' hand to hold the axe in his classic way, and it's like, yes, we're going to reuse that because we're not going to do that, 80 more times
right.
for this one shot. It was really amazing to see, just the creativity on the team, being able to take all of these really varying skill sets. We had people that were really trained in realistic animation, working with motion capture, and then we had people that were amazing at doing hand key animation, creatures, things like that obviously there's not motion capture for. And we had amazing cinematographers. Watching the cinematography in this was so cool because I'd be watching a live mocap shoot, and they would have an iPad that was being tracked and with software and moving around and controlling a virtual camera, and watching these actors perform, understanding everything that went into it. It was amazing to see the level of work that was being done, especially coming from Valorant, which is very stylized. It has to be very performant because it's a competitive game. Right. Then going to this amazingly, rendered cinematic type of game was really phenomenal. Yeah.
That's incredible. That is incredible. But I guess that means that you've seen pretty much all of the. All the story, all the big.
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
You won't ask for spoilers on the story. I personally don't want that. I would probably be very angry, honestly.
Yeah, no. I will say it's going to be amazing, and the narrative team, the gameplay team, every single component of what is going into that game, I'm incredibly excited for.
That's great.
Right on. But you mentioned the gameplay real quick. What kind of games yourself? Do you play games still? What kind of games do you?
Oh yeah.
Are you fond of these days? I know Elden Ring came out. Elden Ring's a big, huge, massive.
Lord, give me strength. I can't.
we spent so many hours in that one game. But how about you? What are you fond of?
Sure. So I actually play a pretty varied, I would say, library of games. I've been putting a lot of time into Teamfight Tactics, which, as someone who didn't play League of Legends, it was a lot of learning for me. But I think it was this morning at 2 a.m. I hit plat, so that was my accomplishment. Yeah. And still play a lot of Valorant.
Yeah. We were up at 2 a.m. playing Elden Ring together. Charles and I were
5 a.m. actually.
Yeah, we're up at 5 a.m. playing.
I still play a lot of Valorant. I've been watching my friend play Elden Ring, which is a much more relaxing experience than playing it myself.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong in that assumption.
I'm like, oh look, you died again. I have a Switch. Still playing through. I just bought one of the new Pokemon games, but it's definitely hard. Spending all day working in games and then I'm gonna unplug and go look at another game. So
I can't imagine.
but I will say that's actually the way that my gaming has changed, especially over quarantine, is that games like TFT, games like Valorant, where they are very social, where I'm hopping to Discord with people, that is the way that I unplug, is through socializing now. Right. And so games have really become my outlet for socialization in quarantine, and so anything that I can play while in a call with someone is something that appeals to me.
I love it. It's great.
Right. So then me being I'll say an amateur video editor now, with kind of teaching myself stuff, whenever I see other videos, I can't watch videos the same way. I kind of hyper analyze them. I see what I can steal. It's really hard for me to just enjoy videos as a consumer now. Do you have a similar experience now when you see games, and like, do you look at an animation or something and like, oh, well, that was cool, maybe I can steal that, or maybe that wasn't as smooth as it could have been?
Yeah, I definitely have those moments, and it's funny because it's not as, I guess, disheartening in the sense of like, I'm like, oh, look at that horrible thing. It's more like, oh, that looks like unfinished, like, that production team must have been really under the gun to try to like get this done, and they like, oh, I feel so bad for them. They must
sympathize.
Yeah. I will say it is very hard to play Valorant and not disconnect, because I'll see bugs and I'll know what's causing them, and things that like I used to be responsible for fixing, and I'm like, oh, I know that they don't have the bandwidth to fix that in this patch, but ooh, I want to fix it. So that is a little bit hard for me to disconnect because I have that.
I probably couldn't do that. I probably could not play consistently a game I worked on, because I'd be so like critical of myself. It'd be weird. Yeah.
Who you mad at if you die or a glitch happens? Like, oh, I did that. Oh my god.
Yeah. It's like, is that my fault? It's like you start cursing yourself.
Yep. Sometimes I'll see like some of the early sprays. I'm like, oh, I wish I had time to do that. Ooh, I wish I could have added a missive to that. That would have been so pretty. Damn it.
Oh gosh.
One thing I wanted to ask you about real quick too is this, going back to, like you said, of course, your background, your being queer and Latinx and Jewish, all your upbringing, all those things. Did they influence how you kind of approached making games? How you kind of, like you mentioned, Valorant, of course, is a very creative type of game, and do all the directing and animation with God of War. Did all those, did kind of your entire, just the way you were raised in some sense, kind of help to influence you?
You son of a gun, you stole my question.
Of course. That's what I'm here for.
I would definitely say that it is something that's really present. If Valorant hadn't been the diverse game that it was, where it's, every new agent is from a new country, it would have been really difficult. Like if we saw a lot of tropes, if it was mostly white characters, that overall it would have really I think affected my ability to be passionate about it. So it was something that I was very cognizant of, especially for skins. I was actually responsible for getting things approved by our international teams, doing localization and culture checks, and so I got to see how people from the actual cultures that we are representing are reflecting back on what we're putting in the game. Astra is supposed to be from Ghana, and they actually cast a Ghanaian voice actress who lives in Ghana, and let her put a lot of Ghanaian like slang into the voice lines, like things that the writers wouldn't know because they're not from that culture. And so allowing authenticity in the game was something that was really important, and I feel very happy about seeing that present. There was just a new character that was released that is, allowing a lot of Filipinx, folks, just, incredibly proud of it. Actually, one of the designers on the character team is Filipino, and he was so proud to work on an agent that was Filipina, and really add that kind of representation, not only for himself, but that is a culture that is not often represented in games.
Yeah, I can't think of, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else.
It's also certainly come with its own challenges. So right now, for example, Frame Machine is working on the Hogwarts game that's releasing.
That big one?
I'm so ready.
Oh,
I'm so ready.
You tend to only get like the biggest studios.
Working on my favorite stuff ever.
What are you doing?
Then
How many souls do you sell to the devil?
I need details on that behind the scenes later on. That don't even have to be on video, just for me personally.
Well, you start by drawing a pentagram. No. But, being queer and working on a game that is benefiting someone who has come out as very transphobic has been difficult. And is something that, like pretty much everyone else in our generation, I was a huge Harry Potter fan, and it was a huge part of my, self-directed reading. It's, something that's like, yeah, I want to read, and I want to read this book, and I want to read it all over again.
Right.
And it's been really interesting because J.K. Rowling benefits monetarily from, anything in the IP because of royalties.
Right.
And she uses her money and her platform to support anti-trans causes.
Right.
I had a pretty rough year financially, and accepting the job at Frame Machine was not something that I had any other options to do. Right. I had weeks actually, and this is probably a separate topic for game development in general, but I had weeks where while working on God of War, I was struggling to afford food. And there were days that I couldn't, and weeks I couldn't afford food, and I was living off of snacks. Being able to take this job meant pulling myself out of that, but it also meant working on something that has a lot of baggage. I did a lot of soul searching, and where I landed, and something I had actually just tweeted was, there are queer game devs who've worked on this game. There are trans game devs that have worked on this game. They've been paid. We've been paid. We don't get royalties once the game releases. Like, sales don't affect our pay. And so we've been paid. And for people that are saying that, we want to support the trans game devs who worked on this, like, support them by putting your money into queer content, supporting queer nonprofits, voting to protect their lives and their rights. Right. What we're seeing right now in Texas, for example. It's difficult, and having an awareness like that I think you're both familiar with, being Black, there are things that you are just aware of by being part of the community and having a certain set of experiences that other people will just not be cognizant of.
Right.
Working on the game while being cognizant of it is really difficult, and is certainly influenced by my background and trying to figure out, how do I live while also standing up for what I believe to be the right thing to do.
All right.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, obviously, it can't be easy to try to compartmentalize that, and I completely feel with you as far as having to make hard decisions during hard times. But if there's any solace, I think that there are times when the art transcends the artist. I feel like Harry Potter is a prime example of that, where there's such a strong vocal community of people that are in the LGBTQ community that do embrace that property and see it as their own and separate themselves or separate it from J.K. So it's not like it's almost not like how dare you work on this property that the creator is, not in support of us. It's almost like, no, this is our property. She's over there, we're over here, kind of a thing. It may be wrong, but that's kind of how I tend to view it.
I think that that's difficult for me because it's still benefiting her monetarily, and she actively is using her money towards supporting, so it's hard, and I think especially when you look at the people that are out there, instead of trying to separate the art from the artist, just going and supporting, creators of color, supporting queer creators. Like, instead of looking to find that middle ground, put your money towards marginalized voices, marginalized communities, marginalized creators. And so while I support my team has put a lot of hard work into working on the cinematics for it. I personally am not going to buy the game. As cool as it looks, as much as it is like every Harry Potter fan's like dream to cast spells and work on it and see the world in that way, that is something that I think, especially with looking at the Harry Potter games that have come out in the past, this is like what people have been waiting for. And it's something that it's hard, but it's an easy decision in that sense.
Fair enough.
Well, I totally agree. And I can't imagine what it's like being in a situation in which you're working on something like that kind of goes against your core beliefs. But in a similar sentiment to Ethan, I will say that I feel like this series has meant so much to many different people, queer, straight or not. Me in particular, this series we've talked about it on the podcast before. Like, the Harry Potter franchise to me has meant a lot to me, like my early development as just a nerd and a person in general. And even before I found out about all the stuff and allegation, well, not even allegations, things that J.K. has done and said about the community, it kind of hurt me because the series meant so much to me and how I went about it. And I want to thank you up front for working on this project, because I'm personally going to get the project, but because it means so much to me as an individual. As difficult as your decision was, I want to say that you probably doing this has made a lot of people happy and probably put a lot more joy into the world. So although negative stuff is probably going to come out of it with JK using her money to fund things that go against that community, you probably in doing this have made a lot of people within the community and other communities a lot happier by making this project. So I will thank you for that.
I thank you too. And it's such a weird place to be in, because to put it in perspective for us, for Charlie and I, it's horrible. One of our our catchphrases on this show is Jim Crow. We talk about Jim Crow all the time, and it's kind of like, if we were working on something that was benefiting Jim Crow, you better believe we damn sure wouldn't buy that thing. So it's kind of like, how could we? It's a very, very hard place to be in, and I hate that it's a place that you are. I hate that it's that the I don't know. I don't know what to say. It just sucks. It just sucks.
It's a tough decision to make, for sure.
Yeah, it's a tough decision.
I can't imagine going through that. That's tough.
I can't make it. Yeah. And we can leave as much of this in or as much as out as you.
No, it's fine. I think this is important because this is, this is a struggle that, I think people face in pretty much every job, that they're going to face things. They're going to, people who are working a minimum wage job, like it's generally not obviously their first choice, and the companies generally aren't going to be great, but they're also doing that to survive. And the thing that I think is important is to focus on that yes, I've had to work on this. I mean, like I said, I was really struggling. I also had gone through a separation from my fiance, moved out of the house that we owned. Like my financial situation was pretty wrecked, over the last year and a half, and having to make a choice for my own survival, while also figuring out how to, again, stand up for things that are at the core of what I believe in, at the core of the health and safety of my community. It's really hard. And so, I am focused on the work, but it's something that it has only strengthened my resolve to, when I am able to have the freedom of choice to, have a selection of positions that I can choose from. Absolutely. Really only working on games that not only have the creators behind them being, people of color, queer people, trans people, QT BIPOC in general. Not just that, but also the active teams working on them, having that representation. Like at Riot, there was a joke, a friend of mine joined, he was actually my Riot buddy, and he was, I think, the second Black game designer at Riot.
Massive
at that time.
That's very telling. Very telling.
Yep. And hearing conversations like that, it's it's really difficult. And when I look at a lot of representation in League of Legends from the early days before, when the team was really small and almost entirely, if not entirely white, you look at, characters like Senna, characters like Lucian, and you look at their splash art and it's they don't know how to draw people of color.
Clearly outside looking in. Yeah.
Yep. And you see now what's been done and refreshing their splash art, because you now have concepts artists and illustrators of color who are working on this game. It is refreshing to see, but there's still so much work to be done, and it has just strengthened my resolve to really push for that within gaming and entertainment as a whole.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. And that's and real quick, I want to thank you also for those who don't know. I guess no one would know this. The reason I know Ben is because I met him at a LA Comic-Con, and he actually supported me. He came out, bought I think my entire section of books. So he was supporting Black-owned, Black-created comics, and so it's kind of the same idea as if you can support any kind of art that actually is made by and celebrates queer, Latinx. Whatever it might be, all these different things, and you can just do it. Please do it. So it's absolutely
there are plenty of QT BIPOC fan artists of Harry Potter that you can buy their fan art and support them while still loving the IP separate from Rowling and putting money in the pockets of marginalized creators.
Absolutely.
So to kind of, I guess, get on a joyous note here, in regards of representation, that's obviously been a big topic of discussion so far. Do you have any characters or in any kind of format, whether it be game, movie, TV show, and that you really felt a connection with?
God. I would say that the updated representation of Senna, actually, when I was researching Riot after I applied, after I'd interviewed, I wanted to learn more about the Riot IP, and seeing there's a cinematic with Senna and Lucian, and she is so badass. She has this giant gun that is twice the size of her body that sits on her back, and I had actually gone to, there's a visual effects school here in LA called Nomen, and they had done a free talk, and there were creators from Riot, and so I got to see a lot of her concepts and a lot of the initial designs, and I had to know more, and it was just, I would say, certainly an inspirational one.
Nice.
as a kid, I loved Samus. I loved this idea of, like completely breaking expectations, because I come from a family of feminists, and being able to have this, badass bounty hunter, and this reveal of like, oh, she's a woman. Oh, that doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't change.
Except for the part where it does matter, in the sense of breaking stereotypes and pushing that. But it didn't matter to the strength of her character. It wasn't something that you often see as, well, they succeeded in spite of,
Right.
It didn't disqualify her from her job at all.
Right. Exactly. And, it's hard because there are so few good representations of people of color. Ikora Ray from Destiny, I loved.
Yeah.
I think it is, there are characters, and I would love to see what more and more people can do. I love Astra from Valorant. The design of her kit, it's beautiful. It's purple and gold. It's regal. Her voice lines are amazing and hilarious. I would say those are ones that stand out. But I wish there were more.
Right on.
I had one more question that came to mind, because you, very in the beginning of the episode, you spoke on something that meant a lot to me, that I've kind of had a similar conversation with Ethan about in regards to single player games. Mm-hmm. For me, I feel as though single player games offer an experience that you really can't get in any other type of game, just due to you're building an atmosphere, you're telling a story, and you're getting immersed in that world. What do you think it was about single player games that kind of captivated you so much when you first started your journey out as a gamer?
Sure. I think single players are unique because, aside from what is being delivered by the game, your experience of it is completely about what you project onto that game. There's nobody else that is influencing what your experience is. When I think of Valorant, for example, like, so much of my experience is playing with other people and what those specific friends add to whatever my experience is of the game. With single player, it is your brain projecting, processing, empathizing with these characters. It reminds me a lot of, I had health issues in high school, and I was on home study for a few years, and was reading Harry Potter, rereading at that time. And so much of that was like me alone, completely alone in the house, just reading and having a journey and going along. And it is almost like starring in your own story, because it is, you feel like you're a part of that journey.
Absolutely.
And especially as, a queer kid who was not, I went from to a Jewish school from 1st to 8th grade. I was, I think, one of 2 Latinx people there, but also because I think my entire generation in my family does not speak Spanish. And everyone above does, I also didn't feel like I fit fully in like the Latinx communities that I was in. And so being mixed, being white passing, always feeling like I wasn't quite a part of, all went away when I'm in an experience with just me and a game, in a world like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's funny, and we don't mean to diminish anything that you're saying, but we can relate on some level too, because we're blurs. Just obviously since we're Black nerd, and it's we generally we know the value of finding a community of people where you feel kind of at a place where you don't feel like your ideas or your passions are celebrated typically amongst your kind, quote unquote, and then to find people that are in your community that people that are in your kind of typically what should be your group of people that actually value the same things you do. It's irreplaceable. It's very it's invaluable.
Yep.
I empathize and understand completely, because I went through the whole, like you said, with being not feeling like you fit within either community. Again, I went through the same similar issue with, the term Oreo was passed around a lot of. My way I spoke was attributed to being white, or my intelligence was attributed to being white. So I didn't really feel black enough at some point in time, or I didn't feel I was too black for the white kids. So I had to find my own lane. And like you said, with single player games, I played games so much growing up. My mom, I love you, but she probably was annoyed with it. Again, all that went away, and I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the journey. I just got attached to so many different characters that meant a lot to me. So that was very interesting to see. That's a similar, it's a reoccurring thing that I've heard from multiple people now.
And again, thank you as a game developer for giving us that experience, and for us to hear that you actually iterate that you're aware of that when you're creating single player games for us. One makes it that much more evident when we're playing them.
Man, he makes dope shit, man. That's all I can say.
I mean, you played it.
I love it.
Played it. It's awesome. It's awesome stuff. My last question is probably the most important question in the show we're ever going to ask to anyone. What is the name of your pup that you are watching right now?
So it's two actually. So Sam and Frodo. So those were names that I picked. Nice. So my ex fiance and I adopted them about 5 years ago, which is wild to think about. And it was an amicable separation, so I get first dibs on pup sitting. So I drove back to my place for this call because I knew they would probably be barking and interrupting, but otherwise I would hold them up to the camera.
Oh, I love it. No, thank you so much. By the way, awesome names, perfect names,
amazing names. Before we close out, is there anything you want to plug or promote, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Valorant and God of War, they're... Yeah, there's just an amazing group of people working on both, and I am so excited for, upcoming skins and characters for Valorant, and for people to get their hands on God of War and just, see what an amazing world has been built.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
And you mentioned we're crazy hype, but real quick, you also mentioned that you are teaching your own classes coming up here. Would you just kind of mind just
Oh no! So I'm not teaching.
Okay.
I was saying, just that I've purchased a lot of courses.
I thought you were
No. I will at some point probably want to teach, given that is a passion that is left over from when I was considering being a professor. But I have a long way to go before I can do that.
Fair enough. Okay, no worries at all. Well, thanks again so much again for buying my random books, little kitty books, and thanks for spending the day with us. This is a great pleasure, truly.
This is great.
Sandoval, it was great meeting you. Thank you so much for coming on and giving so much insight. One of the better conversations we've had on the podcast itself. So thank you so much, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Then and Now podcast. We will see you guys next time.